And welcome everyone. My name is Mohammad Reza Sharifi, and I am the technology specialist at the PORSESH Policy Research Institute. I earned my bachelor's degree in computer science, and I did a master's degree in computer science from the University of Mysore in India. And I am currently completing a second master's in data science, with focusing on AI and in particular large language models at Newcastle University here in the United Kingdom. I am truly honored to moderate today's important conversation about AI for seniors, staying safe, exploring everyday tools. We'll dive deep into leveraging AI and what AI is and how AI could be helpful for everyone in our day-to-day life. Thank you all for joining us. Our goal is to create an open, welcoming space where we can learn how AI can help seniors enhance daily life, while also understanding how to stay safe and protect privacy, which is an important thing in today's world. So before we begin, let me briefly share today's agenda so you know what to expect. First, we'll start with the introduction of the organizations hosting this event and our experts on the panel. And then our speakers will provide their opening statements related to today's program. Afterwards, I'll moderate the panel discussion with our experts, trying to exchange some questions on the topic. And finally, we will open the floor to your questions and comments. And if you have got any questions, the chat room is right here, open to everyone. And if you would like to speak, you can just unmute yourself and start speaking and asking your question when it's the right time. And once again, the session will be recorded and is expected to last about 70 minutes. So we hope we don't cross the time limit we are considering now. So we highly encourage you to participate actively, whether by posting questions in the comment or in the chat, or raising your hand to speak. So you feel free to just share a concern, a comment, a question, and then we have got the experts to take up your questions. All right. So today's event is brought to you by PORSESH Policy Research Institute in partnership with Sound Generations. So I'll just briefly talk about PORSESH Policy Research Institute and Sound Generation, and then I'll talk about I'll give a little introduction about the experts as well. All right, so PORSESH Policy Research Institute, or it's also known as PR, is an independent, nonprofit, community-centered research institute based in Seattle, Washington. We focus on producing fact-based research that leads to impactful interventions and solutions. One of our key strategic focus areas is addressing technology disparity, especially among seniors and underserved communities. We believe that everyone deserves equal access to trustworthy technology and information. This event is part of our effort to bring industry experts and academia together to share knowledge about AI, ensuring seniors feel empowered and safe using these everyday tools. And Sound Generations is a well-respected nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting older adults in the Seattle area and beyond. Their mission is to help seniors live healthier, safer, and more connected lives through a variety of services, including health and wellness programs, caregiver support, and educational workshops like this one. And recognizing that technology can sometimes feel overwhelming or inaccessible for seniors, Sound Generations works hard to bridge this gap by providing resources and training that empower older adults with the confidence and skills to safely and effectively use new digital tools. Their partnership with the PORSESH Policy Research Institute highlights the crucial role of community support in making technology inclusive and beneficial for everyone. So thank you for being part of this program. I'm sure there are representatives from the sound generations as well. We're pleased to have today's event. So without any further ado, I'm honored to be joined by the two distinguished experts. We've got on the panel, we've got Dr. Bell and we've got Kirandeep. So I'll just give, although they have, today when I was, I think just since yesterday when I've been studying Dr. Bell's work, very impressive. And it was very hard for me to concise all those achievements and the work Dr. Bell has done so far. I wasn't able to concise it, so I wasn't able to really shorten the great work that he has done so far. So Dr. Bell Howe is an associate professor at the University of Washington's Information School. And Dr. Bell has a PhD in computer science from Portland State University and a bachelor's degree in industrial and systems engineering from Georgia Tech. Dr. Howe's research focuses on data science, urban analytics, and development of data-driven tools that serve communities safely and effectively. He has played a pivotal role in developing educational programs like the University of Washington's master's degree in data science, and leads initiatives like the Cascadia Urban Analytics Cooperative, which applies data science to real-world urban challenges. His expertise helps us understand how AI can be responsibly designed, deployed to support seniors in their daily lives while ensuring privacy and security. Very relevant to the topic, and we are very honored to have Dr. Bell with us today. And on the panel, we've got Kirandeep, who is a second-year PhD student at the Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Washington. So Kirandeep's research centers on building trustworthy AI agents, intelligence systems that proactively assist users while protecting privacy and ensuring transparency. She studies how AI systems remember and use personal data, identifies hidden risks, and designs safety measures that are especially important for seniors who want to use AI confidently. Before starting her PhD, Kirandeep was a visiting researcher at the Max Planck Institute for Security and Privacy, focusing on privacy-focused AI design at the intersection of technology policy and machine learning. She is also active in community efforts promoting responsible AI through her role as a student organizer with Reza at University of Washington. We are very pleased and honored to have you both here with us today. So after the panelists' opening statement, we'll have some questions and answer session with the experts. And feel free, as I said at the very beginning, if you have any concern, if you have any questions, if you would like to speak, please do so. And you can share your questions in the chat box as well. So yeah, so now please join me in welcoming Dr. Bell for his opening remarks. Dr. Bell, the platform is over to you.
Thank you so much. So I was intrigued in receiving this invitation, and I had to think about it. There's so much happening in this space, and it's affecting so many different groups of folks that in this one seemed kind of unique enough that I wanted to maybe kind of engage. And so I'm sort of here to maybe hopefully hear a little bit about what people's perception is of what's going on, as much as me kind of telling you what's going on, which sometimes you can maybe read from the news and so on. So I had just three simple points I maybe wanted to make, which I can't necessarily claim are the right 3 points or the only 3 points or anything else. It kind of depends on where folks are and what kind of questions they have. Part of my confusion in this space, this is always a little bit true in any kind of research area. We stay up here in the ivory tower and we study some of the topics, and we can kind of lose sight of what people are happening. But here in this space, it's off the charts, right? Like the speed at which these things are moving and the degree at which the information about what's happening is getting out there is just literally unknown probably to anyone. Even the companies that work on this space probably don't have a great sense of really how people are perceiving this, especially if you're perhaps a little bit disconnected from the day-to-day work. So there's a significant fog out there, I would claim, about what is possible, what isn't possible, what's going to happen next, what is happening now, what the capabilities are, and so on. So I thought I'd just sort of make 3 points that I thought about here. At the very last minute, I decided to maybe put slides up, but they're not really slides. They're really just a couple of words on things just to kind of give a visual in the background. But I'm going to go ahead and see how that works, just to kind of center our attention on a couple of things here. And I guess I need to hit there we go. And then I'll do this. All right. This is a shameless plug. I co-founded a center called RAISE, which is the Center for Responsibility in AI Systems and Experiences. I'm rotating in to lead the center for the next couple of years here and try to raise some funding in a climate where there is no funding to be raised. So this will be a little bit of a challenge this year. What we meant by responsibility when we founded the center was perhaps a little bit.
One second. Sorry about the.
Oh, no, that's all right.
It's like
technology is technology.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
So what we meant by responsibility in when we founded the center is a little bit different within what I mean now. We originally were thinking about things around when you deploy these tools, you can make discriminatory decisions about things. If you try to automate the sentencing in a criminal justice system, you can get the wrong answer pretty badly when you try to use technology instead of humans. You can, when you're hiring people, you can make bad decisions. And so we studied these problems as many other people have. And while those problems are still very, very important, my interest and my focus and our center's focus has shifted more towards questions of a $10 word, epistemology. And so epistemology means, how do we know what we know? How do we know what's true and what's false? And we're interested in this question that comes really directly from philosophy, which is the least practical, perhaps, field traditionally. But these questions are becoming front and center as we interact with these tools. How do you trust what it says? How do you understand whether it's trying to tell you the truth or not, or whether it's trying to spin a story? And so we have some technical research in this space, but I want to kind of stay at maybe a higher level here, given the nature of the event. And so just the 3 points that I want to make here. One is that this may or may not be clear to everyone, but there are many different AI models. If you read the news and you kind of consume what's going on, I think it's sometimes tempting to think that there is maybe one or two of these, right? The large companies deploy their very large models. You'll see OpenAI, you'll see Microsoft, you'll see Google, you'll see Amazon being mentioned. And there's a temptation sometimes to think that that's all the only thing going on. But there is actually, hundreds and thousands of these things being used at all different levels of application. And the capabilities between the largest and the small ones, I would argue, is not as great as the large companies will have you believe. And so what I think you'll see maybe the practical advice is that you are not, required to only use the one you hear about in the news. You can explore many things out there, click on those links and try them out and gauge for yourself for whatever you're trying to do to experiment with them. The other point that may not engage day to day with how folks are using this, but is important to recognize for where we're going in the future, is that smaller models that can be deployed outside of the scope of these very, very large, largest ever in history companies actually are very capable and can do a lot of work. And so you don't tend to see this unless you kind of work in the area. All right. Larger does tend to be better is one of the discoveries of the last few years. But I think that effect is overemphasized because of the incentives of the large companies to argue that only the largest companies in the world can really deliver the value that you see of this. They're strongly incentivized to kind of send that message, and it's not quite as true as they say. So we'll see. I claim we'll see in the future. Let 100 flowers blossom, and you'll see lots of different things happening in this space. There's more I want to say about that, but I'm going to
his stance moves. So if you happen to miss the iconic Rachel Lawrence twirl session last year, we're giving you just a
on the grand jury report with Jeffrey Epstein, Ms.
Sorry.
The other point I want to make, and this is sometimes a little bit controversial perhaps for folks, but my claim is that there are no longer any obvious limits for what these things can do for what I'll call simple tasks. And a simple task is you write some instructions and you get a response back, right? So you say, I'd like an image that looks like a shrimp riding a bicycle. It will give you an image of a shrimp riding a bicycle. If you want to write a short story, you'll get a short story. If you want to say, please organize my calendar for me and tell me my main 3 tasks, that we are no longer able to design a simple task with an input output for which humans can do better than these models can. And that is a pretty profound eventuality, and that's really only been in the last 9 months or so that's been true. So I'll say that again. We cannot figure out how to design a challenge that humans can do better than these models can, as long as you give me some leeway on what I mean by simple. Okay. What is not simple is longer term tasks that require multiple rounds of complexity and interaction with the world. So if you want to plan your vacation and you need to say, go find me a hotel room, but try to minimize I need to save some money. I'd like to go somewhere warm. I need to book it and so forth. The models do tend to kind of break down and start to make mistakes more often the longer the horizon is for that. Many people are actively working on this, and it's not obvious to me that we won't get there for these longer tasks as well. But as of right now, they'll still make some mistakes in those kind of contexts. But a simple input output, ask a question, get an answer, follow these instructions for me, and so on. These things there can exist a model that does it better than any human, and so that's a very profound situation that we find ourselves in for work in the general economy. The last thing, maybe just for that may be a little bit more day-to-day practical. They're increasingly useful as what I'll call conversation partners, which I in particular, me and many other people have been interested in the potential value in democratizing mental health services. Right, there is a desperate shortage of access to expertise in the world, and there's an ever increasing need for these services. And it's not clear to me how we catch up and close that gap. And these tools could. There's plenty of research that shows that these tools can perhaps try to fill that gap. By interacting with this, you have access to what the research shows in, say, psychology. You have access to best practices from therapists. You actually can use this. However, as of especially recently, there are risks here. These models are dangerously obsequious, meaning that they will tend to tell you what you want to hear, and they won't have any ability to really see whether you're trying to kind of spin you're trying to explore some kind of creative writing exercise that has nothing to do with reality, or you're actually trying to get real help. And so they could drift from one to the other, and you may not be able to tell the difference because you've put your trust in these. And there's been a lot of information in the news here where people have come up with an idea and they think it's a practical idea, and it's pretty obvious to those looking outside, watching this dialogue, that it was more of a creative writing fiction exercise, and people are being fooled by this. They're thinking they have a practical idea, and they've in the most extreme cases have needed professional help to try to separate themselves from this. So there is some very real danger there. And then of course they do still make mistakes routinely, frequently, in situations where you wouldn't expect it necessarily. For example, they will, if you say, "Hey, please find me the source," how do you know that that's true? Can you please tell me what paper I should read? It will happily generate some paper that doesn't exist at all, and you may not know the difference unless you're going to check all that yourself. And so this is still a problem and will probably permanently be a problem in one form or another. And so I don't want to discount how useful they can be. There's plenty of evidence that these things are providing value in that case. When you say, "Hey, I'm feeling kind of down today, and I'm wondering if you have some tools for me to maybe kind of improve my mood," there is a number that it will give you access to the best practices that therapists will have, and it will help you work through those and converse with you. And this has never been true in the past, right? There's never been a technology that can do that, and so that can be valuable. However, it's up to the user to be careful about drawing that line. And right now, there are not very good guidelines for helping you do that. So there is some danger there. So again, this is sort of a random set of three points that I wanted to make that I thought might be broadly useful, and they all had to do with this idea of responsibility in my mind, that we're interested in truth and power. And in this point about power, I'll maybe make one more point. These models, this technology is being deployed aggressively to reinforce existing power structures rather than counteract them, right? So insurance companies have access to this stuff, but it's harder for you to use an AI model to fill out your insurance claim, while it's very easy for the insurance company to deny your insurance claim. It's difficult for you to kind of use AI to help combat your traffic violation, right? Or get out of that, but it's very easy for other people to sort of deploy to detect traffic violations. And so we're in this kind of period of runaway inequity that I do worry about in this space. And so some of the work that we try to do is try to figure out ways to deploy these things on the other side, so that the rest of us can fight fire with fire a little bit and have it be a bit more balanced. It's not going great right now, as you can see from the news. I'll stop there. So I'm happy to be a little bit more practical. I know these are very high level points, but I just thought these are things that have been on my mind in the last few weeks, and I thought I'd share them.
To be honest, there are a lot of good things to take out of the very short presentation you have had. A lot of good things. I'm personally because I'm personally researching and studying large language models.
Sure.
I can definitely relate to each point you made, and the people that I talk to. Yes, unfortunately, there are situations, and there are people who substitute and replace recommendations made by AI with their own intuition. So thinking that, okay, AI knows better than me, which sometimes it's not actually it's not very practical. It's not very good at all. And the AI world is now a very fast-paced one, no doubt about that. We read the news every day, and every week we see new models being deployed, new models being introduced to the market, and the companies don't really care how people perceive it. Do they really like it? Okay, AI hallucinates, makes mistakes. Do they have to do something about it? There are a lot of things. These companies, these gigantic companies, they don't really care about those things. And at your center, definitely, I read about and then how your center and your work, your team is moving towards designing responsible AI systems, and yeah, a lot of good points. I hope all the participants could relate to the points that you made as well, not as a technical person like me. But maybe very briefly, but of course, or I'll just raise that question during the Q&A. And regarding the application of AI in different sectors, especially in the health, where people use it in the healthcare, where people use it to get some health advices. I think Kirandeep can dive deep into designing. Can give us more information maybe about that, and how AI, especially AI agents, are being the center of attention for such works. There are companies that are specifically developing AI agents to take care of health health advices or to take care of like insurance advices and everything. And yeah, it would be great to have Kirandeep's presentation, and then I'll try to raise the questions to Dr. Bill after the presentation, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Reza, for amazing questions and discussion points. So I'm very honored to be sharing this platform with Bill. I've been following his work for long, and I really admire his work. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Yeah, I'll try to share my screen. Is my screen visible?
It is, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so today I kind of wanted to take off my hat of like being a researcher. I just kind of want to keep it very like user friendly and how we all use AI tools. So this talk is going to be a little bit about what we call hidden paths. So this is a lot about how we design AI agents and how they remember and share our information. So I thought this would be helpful for a lot of folks who use AI tools every day. And so all of us use AI like every day. So starting with our devices like tablets, for talking to our loved ones, for using, for example, Apple Watches, for tracking our health, and using LinkedIn, platforms like LinkedIn and others to get like job recommendations and stuff. So AI is everywhere. Now, since it's everywhere, it can make our life everyday tasks pretty much easier. So for example, on the left, you can see that I can just ask Alexa to remind me, remind me to take my pill at 8 p.m. So I don't even have to lift my finger for doing that. So that's pretty easy and that's pretty helpful. Similarly, if we have like a mobile or any device which we don't understand, I can just ask ChatGPT to give me instructions for like navigating some settings, and it simplifies our task. Now, since it's making our life so much easier, so it's very important, I think, for every age group, for every user, no matter their background, to understand what's behind the scenes. So sometimes we never even know that how different AI tools are sharing information with each other without you as an end user realizing it. So one common example could be you're using a grocery delivery app to order, say, low sodium foods for your better heart health, and the next day you see, oh my God, that that your Gmail is actually showing you an advertisement for for blood pressure medication. You never searched it online. You never emailed anyone for that. Now, how does your Gmail knows? So we're going towards agents and society of agents where generative agents and several tools, they are integrated without the end user actually acknowledging it or knowing about it. So a lot of times you will see a lot of terms and conditions that are being that you actually agree to and acknowledge without even going through them, because they're so long, they're so lengthy. And a lot of these say about this, that how different agents communicate with each other and how different tools are being integrated to develop. Like every time I use ChatGPT, it feels like, okay, I'm just like interfacing with a platform. There might be one language model behind it. But when I started going through the news articles, it kind of shows that they're also using a lot of third-party applications and third-party tools to store the data, to manage the data, to manage the memory. For example, here we're seeing agents, I'm showing them that they have a brain, which actually is not a brain, but it's just like a storage of memory of your data, of your information. So this causes several problems. For example, there can be scams and tricks. So if there is a model which has its own memory. It can remember a lot of things about you. And if some third-party application or third-party tool is actually going to have access to it, then attackers can trick the AI models, even not just you, but also the AI models. And there can be context mixing. For example, your health information might be shared with your insurance agent, say. So you might not even have given consent about it, and you might not even know about it. So there can be context mixing, and there, just like Dr. Bill mentioned, there can be hallucination. So these models, they can, because they're generative and they're not just like classifying things, so they're generating content by themselves. So they can obviously like fabricate a lot of things, and they can tell you something that may not even exist. So there can be biases, which is a very historic topic that goes beyond AI, and it extends to AI, but like it can be favorable to a certain set of group, a certain set of people, and it cannot feel inclusive. And there can be manipulations. For example, AI can push you to do something which you intentionally may not be aware of, or you might not even want to do that. So I think it's very important for all of us to be aware of these problems, of these challenges. And now that these problems exist, it doesn't really mean that we should avoid AI, we should not use it, and we should, like completely say no to all the AI tools. We should still use them, but we should always be wiser and understand how it works, and try to share as minimal information as possible. So a lot of time when I attend a lot of talks, so even like the CEOs of companies would say that when you're interacting with such AI tools and conversational tools especially, try to think that, oh, if I'm talking to a stranger, would I share this with them or not? So it's very important that we keep our personal information safe and secure, and especially like have stronger passwords. And so these are some of the things that, some of the points that I follow to stay in control and to stay empowered and stay safe. So these can be like spotting fakes. For example, if I see a link and it doesn't really sound like legitimate, and it feels like, okay, it's just a tiny URL, some random website is having it, or someone is sending to me on my phone. So it's very important to spot those fakes. It's also important to double check when you're getting the certain requests. For example, like I get a lot of like requests for making payments on my phone and my messages, and then I'm always like, okay, I don't even have a vehicle right now, how can I get a ticket, right? So it's very important to think about how legitimate, how you should verify everything before even clicking a simple link. So then we should also protect our personal information, try to have stronger two-factor authenticators, and we should always screen unknown calls and try to keep ourselves updated with the news. I know it's very difficult because of the pace that AI is acing up with. So it's important to cross-check the news about the new models and about the spams and the kind of scams that are happening, and staying updated. So these are the things that I try to follow. So I share it with everyone, and I'm happy to discuss more with everyone, and I'm very fascinated around like how everyone uses AI these days and how is it changing their lives or scaring them. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Karen, for the wonderful
Nothing to AI talk.
presentation. It was great. The fact that you walked us like through how these applications are being developed, either AI driven or not AI driven, and how we like give out consent to things that we don't really, I mean, sometimes you don't really read a lot of all those long terms and conditions, and we just give consent, and our information is being shared across different different websites, different applications, and that's how these companies are actually making money out of the personal information. And you shared a lot of good points with how to stay safe, how to stay in control of your data. Your focus on safety, your focus on trustworthy AI is something very fascinating. And I hope the participants who are here and the future viewers who are gonna watch us later, I hope they could use some of those points to stay in control of their personal information and could use these applications and AI tools in a responsible and in a safer way. All right, so I would like to acknowledge and appreciate the presence of everyone here, and also in the community centers, those who have gathered. I would again request everyone, like if you have any questions or if you would like to say something, the experts are here. We would like to take your questions. If you would want to speak, you can just unmute yourself later on when it's the right time. And if you're saying you don't want to talk, no problem. You can just write it down here in the chat room and we'll try to take up that question. Okay, so I'll try to keep the panel discussion as short as possible so that I could give like more time to participants, to our senior participants to interact and to give us more information on how do they use or if we have any questions or concerns. Okay, so we're going back to Dr. Bill, and I think I'll just raise this question to both of you. Do you use AI on a daily basis?
That's a great question. I think like a lot of people, I do. And I think, I've had my own journey with this where, as a technologist, I sort of have this, what I consider a healthy skepticism. And, that skepticism has always served me pretty well. I like to joke that computer science didn't actually work that well for quite a while, right? We'd have these $10 million deployments of huge software systems and a lot of them would fail and or not provide the value that we had, and that was really kind of the norm since the 70s. Really, the more money we spend, it was a bit of a crapshoot about whether you'd actually get a return on that investment, even though the promise was always there. And I claim that in large part due to AI and a little bit because of the last decade of sort of big data, being able to work with very large data sets, that's been changing. These things do kind of work now, and so now if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I built an app last weekend in my basement, and it can predict your customer retention, or it can provide mental health services to people who need it." That's plausible. Like that would have been completely insane, 10 years ago for sure. But now it's like, well, maybe, maybe they do have something useful. Maybe they don't. Maybe they do. We don't really know. It's not almost anything you can imagine may sort of work. And so what I think about is the transition from being able to build stuff to being able to evaluate whether it actually does, what you claim it does. And we have not figured that out. The claims are wild, and some of them are true, or roughly true, and we don't have a general sense of how well things are working right now. So anyway, so back to your actual question, I sort of didn't really think this stuff was going to be that useful for me day to day, but as you start to find your own workflows, it's undeniable that
Yeah.
these things can work and do work. So, helping with writing or even, I mean, I'll be vulnerable here and reveal that, yeah, I think interacting with these things to augment, therapy has been kind of a valuable experience at times. Now, I happen to be a little bit more equipped than the average user in being able to kind of, know when, yeah, that doesn't make any sense or that's wrong or something. And so that's what I worry about a little bit. But I think that, so yes, I do use it. You do use it day to day. I use it probably a little bit less or I'm sure I use it a lot less than many people do. But it's there as a tool for almost everything. And there's benefits and risks to that growing dependence.
Definitely. Yeah, appreciate it. I appreciate the honesty. Like many people would ignore the fact that they are using AI, but they just don't want to talk about it. I've encountered a lot of people who, like a lot of good distinguished people, but then they say like, oh, they don't use it, but they actually do. So it's good to be open and good to be straight about it, saying like, okay, I use it, but then, you have your own responsible and safer way. How about Kieran? Do you use, I assume you do.
Yeah, I'm a tech addict. So ever since I was in seventh grade, I've been using all the AI tools. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so it's it's helpful. It's always kind of intriguing because a lot of these models go back to cognitive sciences, how humans think, how humans would do something, how would we make a machine do something. So it's a lot. It has always been very fascinating for me to interact with these tools. But apart from just like me being an addict to these tools, I kind of use these a lot for my work. So, for example, like I've been good at coding, but like there are like so many huge databases and code bases that we need to understand. Now I can just use ChatGPT and it would just like simplify a lot of things for me, help me understand the writing style of other people, and which can be very difficult to adopt to. So it's very good at simplifying tasks, but I always say, stay cautioned so that I don't reveal too much about myself, so that there's a digital twin of me existing some other day and I'm replaceable.
Great. Great point. Great point. Thank you so much. Thanks to both of you. So as we have most of our participants like the senior citizens, and Dr. Bell, how would all these AI tools could benefit the senior citizens, like overall the people? And what are some of your suggestions in terms of like how to use and how to leverage these AI tools for our day-to-day life? If you have,
So I tend to, I tend to try to balance the benefits and the risks, and I'll kind of always play the devil's advocate. If the room is kind of techno optimist who really wants to talk about technology, then I'll tend to emphasize the risks. If the room is already kind of finger wagging and wants to kind of reject AI, I'll tend to talk about the benefits. And so I'll try to strike a balance here. I think that one perhaps analogy that we're familiar with is, we've been using search engines for 20 years now or something, where you can type in some kind of a question and you get back some documents on the internet, and maybe nowadays you get back some answers to your question directly. It kind of picks up that you're asking a question and will just give you back an answer. And so it's mostly about searching the internet and a little bit about answering your questions. These AI models are mostly about answering your question and a little bit about searching the internet now, and they're getting a little bit better at that. And so one way people are using this, and again, there's pros and cons to this, is as, instead of searching the internet, maybe I'll just interact with the world's knowledge by talking to this conversational partner about my question, or about my research, or about some facts. This works pretty well. The fact that it is again, a conversation partner as opposed to a search of the internet or something else kind of technical, has a lot of value. You can ask clarifying questions. You can say, I don't understand what you're talking about. Can you explain that further? This doesn't make any sense to me. Or can you tell me a little bit more about that one point you made? You can have that kind of dialogue as if you're talking to someone. And that is, I think experientially, and there's research on this as well, that people find that far more useful than trying to navigate some software system that wasn't really designed for that purpose. And so there's enormous benefit in successfully doing your research project, or answering your question, or learning about the world, rather than, say, going to Wikipedia or whatever else you might do instead. The risks, as I think, maybe at least two risks, and Kieran had beautiful points about this. The what you're sharing with these models is being delivered to everybody else at once. And this has always been true about the internet, really. It's been bad for 10, 15 years, where people are taking all your data, but it's hypercharged now. It's at a whole nother level now, because people are sharing more personal information in this conversational mode. You sort of talk about, I was mentioning about mental health services. Like, that's a dangerous thing to be able to be sending off to a company. That's something that could get back to insurance companies or anyone else. So that's one greater risk, but it's also just the capabilities of using that information in a way that you didn't expect. that was kind of a hard problem to solve in the last 10 years. Now it's sort of trivial. You can just sort of take someone's, take a bunch of interactions with these tools and say, please design me an ad that will sell them products. And that's all you got to do. The system will do the rest for you. Anyway, so those are the I think that's the using it as a interface to the world's knowledge is clearly possible. But what they're doing with the information on the back end is a greater risk even than it was 10 years ago, and it was a pretty big risk back then as well.
Yeah, I think I can get back to the data privacy part in the next question. So I'll just raise the same question to Karen. What do you see, like, these AI developments could benefit the senior citizens, and how, in what scale?
Yeah, I think a lot of these tools can be very conducive for seniors, because my grandma, she uses this Apple Watch to track her heart rate. We try to see that, oh, is it normal, over a certain period of time. So we try to, she also tries to track her activity, is she walking enough steps? So, she had this issue of thrombosis, so where they get like blood clots in their legs. So we've been using such apps and devices, and I think she's getting better at it. And as she keeps on using them, and then I think like there are so many like translation tools. So if seniors want to travel, they want to explore the world, they don't know the language, they can use that. Even just like I see a lot of people using these AI tools because they feel lonely and they don't have someone to talk to. So because it's so conversational and because it feels like you're talking to a human, it just feels like someone is there. So I think there are so many benefits of using these tools, not just conversational agents, but like there's so many other AI tools, and we can just like sit, and if you don't have the energy to walk, or you don't have the energy to go out, you can just like order something online. And now you don't even have to open an app. You can just like say, hey Alexa, do this for me. So I think for different age groups and for different people, these tools, the way we can use them, it varies from different people and different groups. So these are super helpful, but I always say that we always see what's there, that's visible to us, how we are using it, it's solving our task. But it's super important to be to be aware of what's happening behind the scenes, and to be always aware of what worse can happen. So always try to like use these tools with, and I always try to go through the settings, the privacy settings of different apps, even when I'm using, and even when I'm like encouraging my grandma to use her Apple Watch, that, and making sure that data is never shared to the server of the companies, so that it's her privacy. It's even if she's using it, it's her privacy, it's her choice, and she should be able to opt in or opt out. So we should always like think like that what can go worse on the back end. So yeah, I think these tools are great. Yeah.
No, great perspective. Appreciate it. And we've got some very good questions from the participants as well. But before we dive into those questions, very, very briefly, if Dr. Bill, if you could talk about the privacy, like the data privacy, and how people should be concerned about this, and
Well,
they even be concerned about this. Like, if you could briefly talk about this.
I probably said everything that I have. I think Kiran is more of an expert in this space. I would defer to her to comment on the maybe expand on some of the points you made. But just to reiterate what we just said, this has always been a problem on the internet. Everybody's watching everything. This has never really been my core area, but many of us were trying to go around and make sure people understood that everything you click on, everything you do is always being watched, is always being aggregated. This has been true for 15 years. It's just that now it's that much easier for these companies to do it. I think with some of the technology is really my main takeaway. But I think Kiran studies this topic very deeply, so I'll defer to her.
Yeah, like current, like very briefly, like how concerned should people be about like the entire like data privacy?
I think like we shouldn't be like too scared all the time that we stop living our lives and constantly thinking that, oh, someone is watching me, someone is trying to, do some bad thing with my data. It's not that, but every time like we talk about like this data privacy topic, there is no system in this whole world that is perfect. There is always like one bypass that, an attacker can make. And that attacker doesn't even have to be like with a bad intent or malicious intent. They're just kids playing around with a model and then they build something out of it. That's scary. That might be scary for some other group because they are grown-ups, they understand the extent or the harm extent, but those children might not understand. So it's just that like now we're more vulnerable to these models.
Yeah.
And still, like, I would say that whenever we are interacting with these, whenever we are interacting with any of such models or even just like normal apps, we should just be aware that, you know, if we do this bad can happen. We've also seen like a lot of news articles saying that, when you're having an argument in your family or when you're, just talking to your friends, don't mention their names, don't give too much information to the model. Say, I had a bad fight with my dad today. So, the
Yeah.
model will know. And
Right.
sometimes in maybe in future, if there is a legal case around it, a lot of data can be manipulated and used against you. So this might be helpful again for the people who are, like judging you. They have the more context about the situation, but still, we should be aware that, your information, it can be manipulated. It sometimes like there was this because I work at Amazon. I'm an intern at Amazon, so like we've been talking about data deletion a lot. That if a person has stopped using a platform, say for 5 years, they have the right to say that, hey, delete my data. I'm not using this platform anymore. Sure, that is good, but now that we have machine learning models which learn about us,
Yeah.
just data deletion is not enough. So even making end users, despite their age group or background, aware that even when your data is deleted, the model would still know about you and it can be interpreted. So I think this kind of knowledge, the more we deliver to the end users, the better it gets for them to make the choice. The
Right.
choice doesn't have to be like 0 or 1 that, hey, this is you use this tool or you don't, but it can be somewhere in the middle that you're using this tool, but you're being aware what can go wrong. So you make the choices and you interact with that tool accordingly. So yeah, so I think
Thank
I
you. Yeah.
always
No, actually, these are some of the very practical and very understandable points. And I appreciate the answers. So we're taking some questions from the audience as well. I think Dr. Bell has already been kind enough to answer to one of the questions already in the chat. Yeah, the
I think,
question.
sorry to interrupt, Vedrena had a nice idea, I think, that maybe just to make sure we're all on the same page here, actually showing just some interaction with these tools, because it's, it may not be the case that everyone spends time working with them. So I wonder if we could just make sure we all have the same visual in our head of what we mean when we say providing inputs and receiving outputs and so forth. Would that be useful?
yes.
That would be very useful.
Well, so maybe I'll volunteer since I did that. So, the this is not the only use of AI by any stretch of the imagination, but the typical use that we're all thinking of in our heads is something like this. You've got a prompt, you've got a box here that you can type literally whatever you want, and it's going to guess, and I'm emphasizing that word guess, it's going to guess a response that it thinks you will like. And what's remarkable about this is that you are highly likely to tend to find that response correct. And so if you say, I need some recipes for, you know, chicken and broccoli because that's what I have in my fridge. what might it do? What might a very friendly person who knows everything about the grocery store and knows all the products and as a expert cook, what might they say? Well, they might say, I spelled some wrong there too, by the way. Notice that it doesn't care about that. It knows what I mean, just like someone else would mean. We all recognize that as a typo, and I didn't intentionally make that, but it's just as good as a human at recognizing that, oh, they didn't make a mistake. And so it throws out some recipes here. We don't know where they came from necessarily. We don't know how good they are, but they're likely to be pretty effective. This was not the case a few years ago. You could type in a question like this and you get back some answers, and it would be quite obviously bad. It would be quite obviously useless in many cases. It's just a few years ago. But the rapid increase of this, the quality has gotten very, very high, especially among some of the flagship products, where you do start to trust the answer. This is where the danger is because if 90% of the time it's good and then 10% it makes some silly mistake, something bad could happen. And this has been the game that people have been playing for a while. They're trying to get them so good that they can be trusted, and it's hard. But what I think many of us have been struck by is how effective it is over the last couple of years. So anyway, I don't know if folks want to try something else or suggest something else that they might want to do. This is sort of a silly example, of course, but the fact that it really could be anything you want to talk about, and the response will be in some sense appropriate or good or useful. That's what's powering all these ideas that we're talking about. That's what's making these things so effective, and why people are talking about the entire economy changing on the basis of this.
Yeah.
Is there any, is there, I want to make sure we're not just talking at people, I guess. Is there something people would like to see what's happening? Maybe just a question for everyone else. How often do you asked us, the panelists, how often we use this? I'd be curious whether how often folks in the room or on the webinar use tools. Is it every day? Is it never? Is it sometimes?
You can unmute yourself and maybe like just share your idea about like how you use AI. Anyone like could volunteer and speak. Yeah. Vedana, of course,
Yeah,
please go.
I'll say, I mean, I ask it sometimes to rewrite emails for like a better
Sure.
tone to make it smoother. So I'll ask ChatGPT to rewrite things. Sometimes to help me with like if I'm working on a grant application, it's really useful because it's a lot of busy work and you don't always have time to write out all the things. So if I have at least an outline, it's really helpful in that way, and it'll help me kind of put thoughts together. So I'll ask it to, write that. But I'd be curious if anybody else has a fun question for it so we could see what it says. What I like about it is once it gets to know you, then it gets smarter over time, right? Too. So I think that's what I've found by using ChatGPT more. It gets to know you too, and the more things you ask it, the better it gets at responding.
Yeah. There we go. Your email is ready now.
So I was just trying to do something silly. Of course, we didn't give it any information about what the hell this actual situation was. So it's making up everything. But here's two versions of an email where it might be a little bit delicate. You want to talk about poor performance, and give it two ideas. And so it left some placeholders. It understood that perhaps it doesn't know enough to actually talk about the content, but it left some suggestions. Kind of a structure. And this one, I suppose, is more blunt. And then here's another one is, it's checking in on support and a path to stronger performance versus performance concerns and required improvements, right? So it's sort of understood that there might be two different ways to write this in two different tones, and you can kind of pick between them. I think what Virginia said, I think many of us do all the time, where you write something like, "This was terrible. I need, you got to do better," so forth, and it's like, "Please clean this up for me because I know I can't send that." And it'll do it more gently, and it will tend to do make it more gently couched in professional recommendations for how to write these emails. It knows the same material that we might read about, say, nonviolent communication or best business practices or something. It'll apply that for you. So in just a few seconds, you now have kind of access to what the perhaps most skillful people in the world are about writing delicate emails. you now have access to that as well.
Yeah, very great. I think one of the participants here we have from the Lake City seniors who said they have not used such, tools before. It's not just this text, but I think you could try the conversation part as well. So very useful, very useful websites. And besides, we've got a question who says that are there any other good are there any other sites or any other tools that they could find it like helpful?
Let's see. So there's maybe two ways I can interpret that. One is tools about AI, and the other is just different AI tools. I'm not sure which one was maybe meant. There are many of this type of interface where you type whatever you want and you get some sort of a response and you can have that conversation and keep going as long as you want. There are many of these. ChatGPT that we're looking at here is arguably the most famous and most powerful. They are not powerful. Sorry, that's not the right word I wanted to use. Most famous and I meant powerful in the sense that they have a lot of money. but there's many of these and they have kind of a similar feel. They do vary in the kinds of responses and there's a tone and people are starting to pick up on this. And whenever they release a new version, people will say, "Oh, I like the old one better." This happened just now with this new version of ChatGPT 5. Many people are complaining that they lost the style that they had become accustomed to, and they're upset about that. And now OpenAI is considering kind of backtracking that a little bit or something. So there are some variations of differences, but the basic capability of write whatever you want and get a response that is appropriate to what you wrote tends to be common across all of them. And then there's someone in the chat mentioned some of the very popular ones. That's fair.
Yeah, I just typed, some of the most popular ones like the ChatGPT and Claude AI and Perplexity. So these are the most popular ones now in the market. Okay, here is another question, like either of you could take it. It says, say more about privacy settings when writing email to someone and you share concerns of family member or health issues in detail. Is that not private info?
Feel like I'm monopolizing the conversation a little bit. Kieran can say more deeply about what's going on here. The thing that scares me is that there are relatively strong laws about how to handle private data. I would argue that essentially all of that is out the window right now with how these tools work because they don't fall into some of the same categories that were described in the laws. And so as you're typing into this, as I'm typing right now into this tool, it's being saved by OpenAI and therefore Microsoft and therefore everybody else and used for essentially whatever they want. And so are you, to Kieran's point, are you going to directly incur some harm because of this? Probably not, right? They're not going to be interested in trying to take advantage of the fact that you mentioned something about your family members. But is it going to be included in the data that is used to train other models or used to sell you ads or use things? That absolutely it will be. And so if it is sensitive, there's the recommendation I heard Karen make, which I think is great, is try to be a little bit vague and try to use a little bit less specific identifying information. And then, when you copy and paste and actually send the email, then you can kind of add in that information. One thing that I do, which I don't think actually works, but I'll say what I do anyway, is I don't actually log in. I don't actually have my user when I'm doing something a little bit more sensitive. This doesn't really work because they're going to be able to figure out that I'm at my computer with my device, and so this is not a hard problem for them to solve, but it might be a little bit more of a distance where you're coming in as an anonymous guest as opposed to specifically I'm Bill Howe at the University of Washington. So there's a little bit of indirection there, but if they wanted to figure out who I am, they'd be able to.
Yeah, I think Karen could maybe share her perspective on that as well. And on the top of that, like when you're talking about the privacy settings, and especially when writing email to someone and sharing the information, and added to that question, there's a question that says, is it better to use these tools on the phone or on the computer systems? So I'm using it, like, do I use it on the phone, on the computer systems, and I still like share like privacy and share like private information?
Yeah.
What do you-
Yeah, so I think like when I say privacy settings or I think of privacy settings, I usually refer to when you're logging in and you have this like a symbol of privacy, or like you go to your account settings and then you have like privacy and settings, and then you can always go there and toggle off where there is always an option of data sharing. That when you toggle it off, that means that they claim that your data won't leave your device for training the model. But there have been like cases, so there was one against OpenAI where they were storing the data of even of like premium customers who were paying for that tool, and they were storing that data using a third party application or third party tool, and there was some bug in that tool, and it actually leaked information about even the credit cards of a lot of users. So that's scary, right? So whenever you're like storing your credit card informations, for example, they're like we do have virtual cards these days whose numbers can be changed very frequently, right? So we can use those, and we can we have credit card fraud detections as well. But this is all about the privacy settings, that going into your account, trying to understand the structure. But when it comes to like typing in directly the email and saying and mentioning, for example, the names of your partners or your family members or the relationships you share with them or the issues you might be having, I think I still feel like I would never do that, because that's kind of when we're trying to because I work with these agents and we're trying to design personalized agents, just like Vardena said, that we as we keep on interacting more, it starts to know more about us. So now that it's starting to know that, okay, I'm having troubles with my family, say, now it's going to have that effect in a lot of conversations in which it might not even be relevant. So in those cases, I still feel like I would never do that, and I would highly recommend not doing that.
And still, like, whether you use it on the phone or on the computer system, I think it should be
So
the same thing, right? Like whether,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
back
always.
to back to the actual question, is it better to use an app on our cell phone or use the computer when using these tools?
I think it doesn't make a difference, like, because whenever I'm logging in on my laptop or my phone, I always use my email and mobile phone. So it's always connected, it's directing back to me. So I don't think it makes a difference.
Okay. I think Dr. Bill has been trying to challenge ChatGPT, and if they are remembering any sort of like and collecting information.
Well, I wanted to give an example of you can
Yeah.
ask it, again, anything. And so, do you collect private information? You tried to give some sort of a description here. That sounds roughly correct, I suppose. And there, it's giving back, the letter of the law, because it is a law in the U.S., or well, through several laws worldwide, that you must be able to delete. They must provide you the capability to delete any information. So it's saying that you can do that. It gave me some things that it learned from past interactions. This didn't used to, even a year ago, this was not the case. Every new chat was completely fresh, but nowadays these all kind of remember, and they try to personalize, and they try to get better and better. So it knew several things from past chats. This doesn't seem to be exhaustive list, so I'm not quite sure how it chose that. And then it offered, do you want me to forget any of this? And I was a little surprised by that. So I said, okay, sure, yeah, forget all of it. And it said, okay, I can't do that. And so it gives me this path where maybe I can manage this. I honestly don't immediately see where the settings is, so I'll have to look for that. But it says, you want me to instead forget specific items from the list right now? Sure, okay, do that. Okay, well, I can't actually do that either. So you can see it seems to be a little bit confused about wanting to be helpful and offer what it thinks you want, but then not realizing that it kind of can't actually do what it said, what it offered. So this is these are the limitations start to show up. It's so ready to try to do what it thinks you want that it might say something that's beyond its own capabilities. And this is the kind of thing that can happen sometimes.
And
I'm not actually sure what the details are here. It seems pretty clear that it cannot do anything just by prompting,
if
but it
you
also pretty clear that there's a way to
if you
delete.
click on
Sorry.
your name, Dr. Bill, it says like the setting is there. I think this on the left,
Frame
your
left.
name, like whatever your name is, down there, your name, like
I'm so sorry. Oh, I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, let me.
It's because I think this memory thing was added like after like some of these models just came out, and then people like started like talking about this privacy data being shared and everything. So I think they have introduced after GPT 4.0, I guess, not exactly remember, but then yeah, there is a place where you could like tell like these models not to remember any personal information. But again, we don't know like what's going to happen in the background. So
Excuse me. Can you hear me? I'm a participant. This is Sharon Levine. Some of this is can I just talk about a few things that might be helpful to seniors that I've learned? Because some of this is a lot more complicated, I think, than most of us need to know at this point. And I mean, I would like to just tell the way seniors might use this, for example, that I've learned in the last few weeks.
Thank you.
Are you hearing me? I don't even know.
You-
For example,
Yeah.
tell me, you ask it, tell me what buses go to the Eddie McAlbey entrance at Carkeek Park. That would be a question. It comes right up with the information. What days do the Mariners play in Seattle so that I know not to drive down in that area? It'll tell you the whole schedule. You can tell it, plan me a 25-day trip to Italy, including visits to Rome, Venice, and Florence, using only train transportation. It'll give you several options.
Mhm.
How do I get from Seattle to Portland, Oregon, using only back roads, avoiding I-5? These are the kinds of questions that are going to be really helpful to us seniors, I think. And so I just want people to know, I've been using ChatGPT, and it gives you 3 options when you go to it. And I always use the don't log in, stay logged out option. I don't set up an account. Just ask it your question. After you get an answer, it'll ask if you need to know more information. I've never used Genesis. I wanted to know others that are helpful. Somebody just posted Perplexity, which I've never heard of, and Claude AI. And I'd like to know more, if you could name 2 or 3 others that are safe to go to that might be different from ChatGPT. But I think that for almost every senior that's listening to this, ChatGPT would probably answer most of their questions or solve their needs. But maybe you could respond to that.
That's fantastic. Thank you for those examples. These are the space is so broad that it's useful to hear what how you're actually using it. So I appreciate you offering that.
Very great perspective. Yeah, really appreciate that. It was very great to connect as well. Yeah, if there is anyone else like who'd like to talk, please like unmute yourself and start talking. You could ask questions. We still got like a few minutes left, and I'll try not to cross the time. But then again, yeah, if you have any questions, we're ready to take the questions as well.
I was also wondering to ask, like, when we move from like traditional Google search to such conversational agents, I was wondering how users feel about it, because I felt like a lot of power is taken away from me. I cannot freely navigate the web, go to the link I want to. It's just providing me the best link that everyone thinks is good for.
Yeah, true. Like, as I said, like this is the opportunity. Like, if you could please, like, if you have had any, uh, okay, if you have had any questions or any comments, if you had any examples where you used, I think those could be very helpful to connect and how you find these, answers. Like, do you double check them sometimes, like, when you get these answers, because it's important. Because from a technical point of view, there's a chance that these models could output something that is not very relevant. Do you double check it? Like, if you have any examples, any sort of like experience, feel free to share those experiences. That would be great to hear from everyone. And I think Dr. Bill could like shortly talk about like the other two platforms that I had shared, Claude AI and Perplexity, maybe. And
Well,
how,
let's see. On other platforms, again, I tried to make this point right at the beginning. There are many of them out there, and so trying them out, I suppose, is the best advice we can give. I actually don't know off the top of my head if there's or what a um, whether there's a model that is specifically advertising how they won't keep anything and they are emphasizing privacy. I'm sure someone is in this space trying to emphasize that, but that could be a useful one to include in the list. The big companies will not be doing this because part of the value to them is collecting all that data, so they're going to be sort of walking the line legally and taking as much as they can probably. But as far as the differences for your experience, it's subtle, right? They're adding new versions all the time. You might have liked the answer, and then they release a new version. And you don't like the answer so much anymore. You might switch from, ChatGPT to Perplexity. You might decide that you like Perplexity's better. It really kind of depends. There's a lot of nuance in how these are trained and how they're optimized and how they're tuned and designed. And for any individual use case, there'll be some differences. The quality I claim will be generally pretty high nowadays, but there will be some subtle differences in how they do this. So some people have their favorites for their use case, and other people just stick with whatever's familiar. But I don't necessarily have a specific recommendation of, oh, you should use this if you're interested in travel recommendations, and you should use this other one if you're interested in um, um, recipes or something. I don't think that that kind of a mapping really exists. One other quick point I wanted to make though. Well, never mind. Let me pause for.
oh no, no, I think I said like if there are no questions, maybe as the very like closing remarks from your point, like you could share. It could be maybe a way of practicing or a way of trying things. What would be like very shortly if you could just share with our participants?
I mean, I think Sharon's examples have been great. I think these things do work. They are there. There might be mistakes in there, but perhaps less so than if you asked your friend to give you, back road trip from Seattle to Portland. There might be a higher likelihood of making a mistake or they forgot a detail that was important. And so this will be very detailed. You can ask for clarifying, ask clarifying questions even here there's some concerns, right? Well, make sure you worry about this. This was designed for leisurely exploration and not speed. So you say, no, no, I really want to get there fast by back roads. I didn't want you to take the scenic route by the ocean. You can just ask it that, and it'll give you an improvement. So I think that kind of day-to-day use, for better or for worse, it is quite effective. And so I wouldn't recommend avoiding it for some of these issues of privacy. But the reason why Kieran in particular has emphasized that is because they are real issues that we're all studying, but that shouldn't prevent day-to-day use.
Great. Thank you.
This is Sharon again. If I could just intervene, like on the back roads one that you've got up, it gave me, for example, how to get from Seattle to Portland, but it did it on the east side of I-5. So I decided I didn't want to go that route. It's mountainous. So I went back and said, give me the back roads using the west side of I-5. And it gave me a whole other itinerary. But back to which was great, your privacy and all. Like if you ask it to plan a trip, better, I think what you're saying is it's better not to tell it exactly what dates you're going to be, for example, in Italy, but just to say this fall, I'm going to be in Italy, because it would store that information. People would know when you're traveling. So wouldn't it be best not to tell it exactly the days you're going to be there? For
I
example,
personally wouldn't worry about it too much. You know, there's not they don't, you know, the companies don't have, you sort of follow the incentives. They don't have much interest in actually understanding specific things about you. If they do have understanding, or if they do have interest in that, it's really just to kind of sell you ads and try to make that better, which frankly isn't quite as effective as everybody claims it is. Like you'll get, you know, just because you shop for a lawnmower, you're going to get ads about lawnmowers for the next 3 weeks, even though you already bought one. Like it's not it's been a bit of an illusion over the last 10 years that this stuff works really, really well. So I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't worry too much, I guess. I wouldn't have too many concerns. That being said, sure, you know, be keeping it a little bit vague. If something occurs to you as like, ah, this makes me feel uncomfortable that I'm giving very specific information, sure, you know, leave it out and you know, you use your best judgment. I'd say I think the main message, at least for me, is that they can and usually will add it to the pile of information that they're collecting about everybody and using it to optimize their systems. They're not necessarily on your side about that, even when they are following the rules. So if you're not comfortable with something, don't do it. But I wouldn't worry about bad things happening today. Actually, I'll put one caveat on that. You know, given what's currently happening in the mess of the federal government, there are some very real harms that could happen. So I'd say if you're talking about colleagues or friends or family, and there are risks of you know, whether due to immigration or whether due to law enforcement or legal trouble and so forth, I probably would keep all of that out there. There is no guarantee that won't get back to the federal government, especially as they get closer and closer together, as they have in the last several months. So that's a brand new kind of concern that I'm personally very worried about. I'm not that scared of companies because they're just trying to sell you stuff. There's a whole different level of power and problems when you have the government behind it, and the two you know entities are getting closer together rather than further apart, which is not a good development.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, like as a closing remark, Karen, if you have anything to share, like very briefly, and then we will just I know that there will be a lot of conversations, but then we try to have such webinars to spread this awareness. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for organizing this. I learned a lot how everyone is using these tools, and it was very interactive and it was pretty much fun. So thank you for having us, and thank you for organizing this. And yeah, it's a great initiative. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Dr. Bill, you got anything?
I think I've talked too much the whole time. This is really big.
No, it was great. It was
I'll
great.
mention what I said in the beginning, that I genuinely don't have a great sense of how people are using it. It's moving so fast and people are using it in such different ways that it's really valuable to hear a little bit about how much penetration it has, how much use there is. And so I've taken that away a little bit and have a little bit better picture about how popular these tools are and how they're being used. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So thank you all for joining us today for this insightful discussion on AI, AI for seniors. Then a big thank to our expert panelists, Dr. Bill Howe and Kirandeep, for sharing their valuable knowledge and perspectives. It was really great to have this interaction and this conversation with you. We hope this session has helped you feel more confident about exploring AI technologies safely and understanding how these tools can support you with your day-to-day life. And remember, of course, technology should definitely empower you, not just overwhelm you. Take your time learning, ask questions if you're concerned. It's always better to ask these questions and of course, like prioritize your privacy and security as well. But it's always good to use these tools in an ethical and safe way. So if you'd like to learn more about or revisit today's conversation, the session is being recorded and it is going to be shared soon on our YouTube channel as well. And yeah, thanks to our partner organizations, Sound Generations, for their incredible work. And from PR, please keep an eye on our future events. where we try to continue to explore this avenue and try to connect the senior citizens and other marginalized communities with the development that is happening in the world of AI and technology. Right. Thank you so much, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.